Welcome to another episode of Inside the Line, Real Stories by Real Cops. I'm Dave Rattigan, across from Dale Lawrence, retired police officer. Like us, share us. We appreciate you listening, and email us at realstoriesbyrealcops@gmail.com if you have any suggestions or criticisms. Anyway, we had an idea for a show, and suddenly this morning or this afternoon, whatever it is, the day of the taping, we've changed course.
Yeah, I was watching my favorite Fox News show the last day or so, Dave. Can you guess which one it may be?
Well, let's say you're not watching InfoWars anymore?
Nope.
Are you finally convinced that Alex Jones is a charlatan?
Absolutely.
All right, good. So which charlatan were you watching?
Tucker Carlson.
Oh, there you go.
And they were talking about an upcoming show about the carjacking trend across the country that is out of control.
Really?
So as I was writing the other podcast, I just threw a few searches in Google, and I said, this is very interesting. We need to talk about this right now.
So were they telling the truth?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not saying that Fox News wouldn't tell the truth. No, I'm not saying Fox News wouldn't tell the truth. But as you know, Tucker Carlson, sometimes a trend is not a trend. But
yeah, there's definitely a trend, and you're gonna see very quickly how bad the trend is becoming and how dangerous and how deadly it's becoming across the USA.
Okay, I know what carjacking is. You know what it is, but just for the sake of
for the average listener, I want to give you kind of the word by word.
I think
definition.
Our average listener is a cop. So
yeah, probably.
All right. But go ahead.
All right.
What's the definition?
So carjacking requires the vehicle to be taken by the use of force. Someone puts a gun to your head, Dave, smashes the window in with a baseball bat. You're at a stop sign, and they drag you out of your car, Dave. That would be force. That would be carjacking. In comparison to that, Dave, you go into your local 7-Eleven to buy some scratch tickets because we all know you're a degenerate gambler.
Yep.
You leave your car running.
Yep.
Some knucklehead sits in the front seat.
My daughter
drives
in the car,
away.
My infant daughter in the car.
That might be a good thing. That would be grand theft, auto theft, depending on what part of the country you're in. They call it different things. Okay. So carjacking is basically you're going to get your ass kicked and they're going to take your car.
Okay. And I know that there's I know Lynn, there was a carjacking thing a while ago.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing new about carjacking.
Trend is an upward trend.
Is it an upward trend? And here's what I always wonder about these things, because people play with statistics, but it's an upward trend compared to 10 years ago,
probably
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Okay, so from 5 years ago, in other words, pre-pandemic, because what's happened is everything went down during the pandemic, and now
everyone's blaming everything on the pandemic. Yeah. No, it's just probably 2017 where it started to slowly uptick.
All right.
But there is a great criminal mind out there, a great sociologist, great leader.
Whenever you say that, I know where we're going with this.
And
there's a great criminologist.
Well, she's actually the mayor of Chicago, and I don't know what she's great at, but just take a listen to this, and you'll see.
All right,
you'll see what we're dealing with.
I'm sure if she's the mayor of Chicago, she knows about carjacking.
Look, we started seeing this rise in cases in 2020. And I'll be frank and say, in Chicago, there was a correlation that we believe between remote learning and the rise in carjacking.
So basically what she just said was...
I know what she just said.
What did she just say, Dave?
She paraphrased a line from my favorite movie, Casablanca. She said she's shocked to hear that there was carjacking in Chicago.
Oh, in Chicago. Well, the trend in Chicago has probably been since 2014, when they probably had 300 carjackings a year. In the last year, Dave, they've had 1,900 carjackings as of 2021. 2022 is still an open book. So her reasoning for that was because of the pandemic, because kids weren't in school. But I did a little research on the Chicago schools. They're not as bad as you think, Dave.
Okay.
There are worse school systems in the country. And Chicago I thought it was going to be hands down the worst. They have a relatively high graduation rate in the 70 percentile. A lot of their schools are underfunded. They're dirty. They don't have a lot of teachers. But the kids that do go to school, the ones that actually show up, actually graduate, and they do a relatively good job.
Okay.
So by her saying that because of the pandemic, she's saying that the good students who go to school anyway are the ones who are carjacking. That's what she just said.
Say that what?
She said that since the pandemic,
Yes. No, I get that part.
the carjackings have increased.
So who's doing the carjacking?
Well, her explanation was kids aren't in school. They're home remote learning. No one's watching them. So those kids who aren't in school are out carjacking. They're out, instead of playing football or basketball, they're carjacking. But in reality, the statistics about her school system is that the kids that actually go to school are relatively normal kids. So they're not the carjackers. Basically, she's an idiot, Dave. She knows she has absolutely no clue of what she's talking about.
Might I proffer a theory?
Yes, go ahead.
On how the carjacking could be linked to the pandemic?
Yes, go ahead.
Car prices. Car prices are up. The production has slowed down. Even used cars are worth a lot more, which means that stolen parts and stolen vehicles are worth a lot more.
Well, we're going to get into that in a little bit, Dave. However, when
I'm
you,
right, but I'm right, aren't I? Aren't I right? Just say, Dave,
you're possibly right. The theft of catalytic converters and stuff like that, absolutely, the market is much higher.
Yep.
But we're not talking about that. That's car theft without force. We're talking about you're driving down the street, Dave. And you roll up to maybe a bad neighborhood,
Hold on, I'm thinking it through. I'm driving through a bad neighborhood, sitting back. I've got the radio. No, I've got my CD player on. I'm playing my Partridge Family Greatest Hits CD. I'm enjoying it, rocking out to the Partridge Family. And then what happens?
You roll up to a stop sign or a stoplight.
And I stop, and that's my first mistake.
And that's your first mistake. And 3 or 4 maniacs, according to Laurie Lightfoot, who aren't in school, roll up to your car, smash your window, put a gun to the window, drag you out, throw you to the ground, and take off in your car, typically for a joyride.
And as they're doing that, I hear them say, "We got to do this quick because I have a Zoom class in 25 minutes."
Absolutely. So that whole theory
So carjacking is just for joyriding?
Carjacking, in many instances, to carjack, it's either the thrill.
Yeah.
It could be like a gang initiation. It could be, let's steal this car. Let's just beat the shit out of this guy. Let's terrorize this guy.
Right.
If I'm going to steal your car, you have a really nice Mercedes, Dave.
Yep.
Yes, I can carjack you. Then I can sell it to someone who's going to sell it again on the open market. However, it's a lot easier just to follow you home and steal your car from your driveway instead of possibly killing you, getting killed. Carjacking is more of a thrill. It's more of a thug. It's a street mentality, whereas stealing a car for profit, those are organized theft gangs.
Right.
It's a little different, however.
It requires a certain amount of skill to steal a car, whereas here's what I think.
There's no skill to carjack you, Dave.
If somebody came up and they stuck a gun in my face, I think it would be fairly simple for them to steal that car.
Absolutely.
Because I would get out of the car right away.
Most people would.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Oh, wait, maybe I'm getting ahead of this, but what if I just hit the gas?
And take off?
Yeah.
We are gonna kind of get into the prevention aspect of it. But yes, Dave, your instinct of how you react in situations like that could be beneficial. You could survive, or your instinct in a situation like that could make it worse, and it could be a detriment to you possibly getting shot.
Oof.
But just to kind of give you an idea, we talked about Chicago. In the last 5 years, they've gone up around 1,600, from 300 to 1,900 in 2021. New York City, in the last couple of years, they've gone up from 150 to over 500. Philadelphia, 800 last year, compared to 170 in 2016. St. Louis, Detroit, Baltimore, and all other small and large cities in between have been seeing this type of trend going. Upward trend, Dave. A very negative upward trend.
Yuck. And if it's for joyriding and terrorizing people, it's a reflection of the gangs.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say gangs, but groups of kids or young kids to young adults, early teens, mid-teens,
How
early 20s.
about if we use the term assholes?
Assholes.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
But you want to know something, Dave? I look at your car and I say, you know something, Dave? They'd really have to be down on their luck to try to steal a 2002 Honda CRV with about 180,000 miles on it. The only thing good in that car is all your audio equipment for your comedy shows, Dave. That's the only reason why they're taking that car, because they're not selling it to anybody.
Listen, that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that somebody sees change on the console and decides to break into the car, and while they're at it, they're like, "Oh, let's take this other stuff. Who knows what this is?"
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we kind of got a little bit ahead of ourselves. We talked about that most carjackings are not organized crime.
Right.
Whereas when you look at stolen cars, you look at Newark, New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey is a port city, and it has one of the largest theft rings in the country. There's over 17,000 stolen cars, not carjacking, 17,000 stolen cars a year in the whole state of New Jersey. And a lot of those are stolen for profit. Rings, organized rings, will give teenagers or young adults $1,000 a car for a Mercedes or a Range Rover or a Highlander. High-end cars, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 cars.
Are they stealing them off the boats, or are they stealing them?
They're stealing them from your driveway. When you pull into the 7-Eleven and leave it unlocked. They're stealing it from neighborhoods. They're stealing it from sporting events. And in some instances, they're carjacking you. But that's not necessarily the preferred technique.
Right.
They don't want to get arrested that way. They'd rather get it an easier way at 2 o'clock in the morning when everyone's asleep. No harm, no foul. So they get $1,000 for a high-end car. Those cars are then shipped out of the port of New Jersey, out of Newark, and they're over in Africa. There's many documentaries out there in Africa. I lived in Africa. And it's very poor. A lot of the countries are very poor. But they're all driving around very nice cars because they get shipped from New Jersey. They go over to wherever in Africa, Uganda, places like that, Kenya, and they have huge lots with all American cars over there. Because they're so corrupt over there, they don't care. Everyone's driving around in Mercedes, Volvos, BMW. I know what they're not driving around in. Your 2002 Honda CRV.
That's a good protection.
Absolutely, it is, Dave.
Good protection. This is fascinating. I didn't know that about Africa.
People from the embassy, embassy personnel always drove these nice cars. They didn't have to register them because they weren't their car. They bought them in country. Paid nothing for them,
and they didn't have to be registered.
No. Because who registers a car in Egypt? They don't register cars in Egypt. It's a free-for-all, Dave.
Wow.
But they all have Mercedes and BMWs, 30, 40, and this is 30 years ago. And these cars are high-end cars. And they're buying them on the street. They're buying them from dealers, and they cost nothing. If they cost $25,000 over here, they're costing $5,000 over there.
We got to move over.
Those great American diplomats, they're buying, they're involved in organized crime because they're buying the cars.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. You would think that the government, the government's not going to do anything about it unless the light is shined upon it.
It really only happens in the third world countries.
Right. All right. So where are we? So now we got carjackers.
So we talked about, or we're going to talk about going forward about what you should do if someone tries to carjack you, how you should respond. Okay. That's going to be prevention coming up in about 10 minutes. But we're just going to give you a little insight on...
Is peeing your pants on the list?
Absolutely, Dave.
Excellent. Excellent.
When things go bad, because you asked the question, should I drive away?
Yep.
All right. And I'm going to give you a scenario where a young kid, this happened in this area, this happened in Danvers, Massachusetts. He was working at a store, parked his car. He looked out front, maybe a half hour later, he sees someone trying to steal his car. So what does he do? He runs out, he jumps on the hood of the car takes off, goes down a highway, and going probably 50, 60 miles an hour. Kid slams on the brakes, they hit a telephone pole. The young kid slides off the front of the car into a telephone pole, dead right there. So his instinct to protect his property did not work out well for him.
Horrible.
Ultimately, all it is, it's a material item. But his instinct as a fighter, as someone who's aggressive, who's going to defend his space, came back to kick him in the ass, and it made the situation for him worse. So there are instances like that, Dave, where someone steals your car. We talked about just give your property up. Your car isn't worth your life.
Yeah,
well, in your instances, Dave, maybe your 50, life is
50.
worth a lot less than your car.
There are many people who would think that. Yeah. What else we got?
That was when things go bad. Now we have some feel-good stories, Dave.
All right.
Feel-good stories. Concealed carrier in Chicago, meaning a guy who carries a concealed weapon.
Oh.
A Second Amendment guy, one of your favorite guys, Dave.
I got nothing against the Second Amendment.
So what happens is, guy's sitting in his vehicle in Chicago. I don't know if it's a nice neighborhood or a bad neighborhood, but I'm thinking someone tried to carjack him. More likely than not, it's a kind of a bad neighborhood. 1:30 in the morning, Dave, so I'm thinking it's probably a bad neighborhood.
This is a good question. Where does carjacking occur?
A lot of times it's random in that you could be driving down the street and you stop at a stop sign. You're driving down the street and you're in a traffic jam.
Yep.
There's a couple of nitwits on the corner and they randomly see your car. You pull into a 7-Eleven. You pull in to get some pizza. You pull into your house, into your driveway. Are you asking me, does it happen in lower income, higher crime areas?
Yes.
More likely than not, yes.
I mean,
but car theft from your property
that's
happens
a
in
different story.
higher income areas.
But if we're talking about a carjacking, we're talking about being downtown. We're going to be talking about, are we in a place with fewer cameras? Or
cameras don't even matter anymore.
They don't even matter
they
anymore?
Don't matter. No.
All right. You're in an urban
city area with a lot of foot traffic, cars, a lot of potential victims roaming around. Yes, a dead-end street in the middle of suburbia, Dave, in the cornfields of Iowa. What are the odds of that happening? That's so rare.
Right. I'm talking about, let's say this. You live in a palatial estate.
Yes.
Near the water. It's not going to happen here.
More likely than not, it's not going to happen in this community. However, there have been instances where any community that has kind of a drug problem, which a lot of communities have, you see a lot of these carjackings are as a result of people fiending for drugs and they're going to sell the car or they just want to grab that car to go get drugs. So you could roll into a CVS, leave your car running, and they might size you up. They might jump in when you go into the store.
Okay.
Or if they're that aggressive or they're that volatile, they might push you aside. They might grab you and they might fight with you, jump into your car, and then take off. I've seen that happen before.
Okay.
Usually, when you're talking about a carjacking, it's someone out there looking to carjack, Dave, and they're just looking for a victim. Probably the least likely person that's going to give them a hard time, I would think.
So they're basically at let's say, urban intersections.
I'm not going to say intersections, but I'm going to say street corners, restaurants, anywhere the car is stopped. Obviously, the car has to be stopped.
Yeah.
It has to be stopped.
Yeah.
Driving down the street. Like I said, it's hard to put a time and a place on it and kind of give you black and white, because there is no black and white area, because a lot of carjackings, a lot of crime in and of itself is just random occurrence.
Right.
Random. It's just random.
When I was a reporter, this was years ago, but there was, carjacking then. But I remember it was a certain pattern. But you're right. The car was stopped. Most that I remember, somebody had stopped for something. They were stopped somewhere, which kind of indicated they were on the road somewhere. But it makes sense. If you're stopped, you're waiting for somebody.
You're listening to your radio, you're on your cell phone, you're not paying attention.
You're on a stakeout.
On a stakeout? Oh, it's a cop. Oh, undercover cop.
Actually, I know a PI. Friend of yours, and he told me that he was on a stakeout, and he had been there, and it was an overnight thing, and he'd been there a long time, and all of a sudden, there's a guy next to him with a gun.
Bad neighborhood in the Boston area, Massachusetts.
Yeah. And but that was not a carjacking situation. That was the thing where
they kind of spotted him and knew he was creeping around, and they probably figured he was a PI.
Right.
Or if not a PI, a cop.
I think they didn't know what he was doing there, and it was sort of like, get out of my neighborhood.
You're just protecting the neighborhood, Dave. Protecting the hood. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Let me get back to the story. We don't even know what happened here.
So there's a guy. The guy has got a weapon.
They both have a weapon. The carjacker has a weapon.
The carjacker has a weapon. He's got a weapon. The carjacker doesn't know that the guy's got a weapon.
Yeah, he pulls it out and shoots him and kills him dead.
Wow.
That's a feel-good story.
That's cops have got to be concerned about all the time at traffic stops. But if you're a carjacker, you're probably not thinking about it that much.
No, carjackers don't have any rules. Cops have at least some rules out there.
Well, they have techniques. They have training.
They're highly trained, Dave.
What training is there for carjackers?
I don't know.
So this guy, and this was, where was this? In Chicago.
Yeah, I don't know, Chicago. Every time I was looking at carjackings, every article that came up was like Chicago. Everything was Chicago.
Yeah, that's well covered.
Let's hammer Chicago. Laurie Lightfoot did it. We started out with that nitwit. We're going to keep on riding that wave.
They've got these Zoom classes. The kids are bored. They can do Zoom anywhere. I had kids doing Zoom classes in their car, and I'm like, don't hit anything. Pull over. But they were just watching. They were in the Zoom class on their phone in the car. Anyway, so these people, they're in class. They don't have their faces on the camera because teachers can't get kids to put their faces on the camera for the Zoom.
Yep.
And they're out carjacking.
There you go.
And they're like, in the middle of it, it's like, Tommy, do you have the answer to that? And Tommy's got to stop carjacking and lean back and go. The answer is Bolivia. And
I know little Tommy at least has an alibi. He didn't carjack that car because he was in a Zoom math class or a Zoom geography class.
Well, that was the problem, because once he said his answer, Bolivia, she said, Tommy, this is a math class. I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right.
So this is good. He shot the guy and the guy died, and there was only one of them. There weren't four of them.
No, there was, well, I mean, there could have been a couple lurking in the shadows, but they didn't come. They did not come to help their buddy who got killed, who got
I would
shot.
say that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. And here's another one, and this is in Philadelphia. So you got a lady driving down the street in Philly.
Yep.
Obviously, she's from the neighborhood because she felt very comfortable driving to pick up some pizza for her and her kids. So she pulls into the restaurant. I guess her husband works in the pizza place. She leaves the kids in the car, little kids.
Yeah.
And the husband looks out and he sees someone jump into the car with the kids. He gets in a foot pursuit. One of his buddies picks him up. They chase the car. They chase the car about a mile down the street. Car gets boxed in. They drag the guy out of the car. They grab their kids.
Yep.
This is the husband who worked at the pizza place.
Right.
He drags the guy who stole his wife's car with the kids in it. So you got kidnapping and carjacking.
Let me ask you this, because
Yes.
here's a question.
This gets a lot better, but go
If
ahead.
the guy snatched the car while the woman was inside the pizza place, is that is that still carjacking?
That wouldn't necessarily be a carjacking, but now you got the kids in the car.
Oh, that's crazy.
So it's kidnapping, and it's gonna be carjacking.
What kind of an idiot steals a car? I guess, and I understand the idea that you might miss one kid. You know, maybe you grab something.
Dave, we're talking about criminals. The term idiot isn't even, they're not even idiots. They're worse than idiots. They're very evil and sadistic.
Well, evil and sadistic is one thing, but 3 kids? Unless his goal was to kidnap 3 children. It was a him, right?
Yeah,
He was a guy.
absolutely. You never know. That could have been his goal. Kidnap 3 kids and sell them on the black market, Dave.
That's horrible. I think a lot of times when you read about these stories, they steal the car and they don't know there's a kid in it.
They don't know people are in the car.
Right. How do you miss 3 of them?
I don't know, Dave. Maybe they're little kids.
Maybe they're, they were actually,
And they were like a year, 2 years, and 3 years. So yeah, they were obviously little kids. They weren't like 15-year-olds.
Oh, well, yeah, little kids. Little kids. Whoever notices a little kid in a car? Have you ever
I
driven
don't know.
with little kids in a car?
Well, it's Philadelphia, Dave.
Maybe they were asleep.
So anyway.
Anyway, go ahead.
The husband.
I like the way this is going so far.
Oh, it's going to get worse, Dave. The husband starts fighting with the guy. He's in his neighborhood. People know who he is. They don't know who he's fighting. So the neighbors, the hood, protecting the neighborhood, Dave, they come out and they start helping the husband, and they beat this guy to death.
Okay.
And they kill him. Shod foot, booting him in the head, punching him. Every other technique you can use, Dave, and they kill the guy.
Yeah.
He's dead in the street.
Because they were mad at him because he was stealing a car with 3 kids in it.
in him, yeah. So I guess that's going to be justifiable. I don't know any court that's going to prosecute them.
Well, the thing is, how do you pick out? Well, I guess if there's footage, you can pick out the
But yeah, they're not gonna, because just call it a kidnapping.
Yeah.
So you have a right to kill people if they try to kidnap your kids, Dave.
Do you really?
Absolutely, you do.
Oh, that's good.
Just letting you know. But you know the ending of this that lets you know it's Philadelphia. The last kind of paragraph in this article was, after an hour went by, EMS, the paramedics and the fire department and the police finally showed up and pronounced him dead on the scene.
After
it took
an hour?
1 hour.
Did anybody call?
That's the thing. I'm thinking no one called me. That's my thought.
I bet what they did is somebody probably noticed that the guy wasn't moving, and then they kind of dispersed.
Yep.
And then
someone goes back 20 minutes later, like, wow, he's not breathing either.
Yeah, nobody called the
Face is all blue.
Well, no. Also, they probably knew he was dead, but they probably said
they didn't care. Not in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
Not in these neighborhoods.
Listen, I don't think they should have.
Probably not.
You know,
But Dave, me and you, we don't come from that area. We're kind of normal people. Some of these people in the inner city, they're a little different than me and you, Dave.
Right. I get that.
Life
I get
to
that.
them is the value of life in many inner city communities, such as Chicago, isn't the same value as it is in a middle class neighborhood.
Right. I get that, but I also get the idea that if somebody kidnapped, let's put it this way, if somebody kidnapped your 3 little kids,
yes,
I wouldn't have a big problem with.
I wouldn't be calling the cops. I wouldn't be calling 911 either, Dave. You're right. I wouldn't be.
I mean,
you're right, Dave. I guess I'm as uncivilized as anyone else in this world.
I think when it comes to somebody who kidnaps children, small children.
You're right, Dave. My bad. I take back everything I said. He should still be in the street right now, 2 years later.
No, they should have called. They should have called the EMTs. They should have reported it. But it doesn't surprise me they didn't report it. And maybe to the beating him to the point that he died was an accident, because I think sometimes when you're throwing somebody a beating, you and I, we would realize that you're going to stop at a certain point.
Yes.
But, somebody steals your kid, you're just going to go crazy.
Yeah, you're going to black out.
That emotional contagion.
Absolutely,
yeah. Anyway, all right. So that's another case where that guy shouldn't have stolen that car.
We literally could talk about this for hours. There are so many carjacking cases that end up like that, whereas the potential victim will turn on the carjacker and will assault them to include kill them. Yeah. And there is many other instances where the carjacker will kill the victim just because they wouldn't give their car up. So it's an endless cycle.
It's a huge
endless cycle.
There's a huge degree of craziness and of brazenness.
Well, whether it's drug induced, whether it's because you're just so fed up with society and like, that guy shouldn't have that Mercedes, I should have it. Whatever your motivation is, from criminal to drug to just being an evil person, whatever it is, you're never going to be able to stop it because it's always about what they have and what you don't have, but what you want. And if you can't get it legally, you'll take it by force. That's just the way criminals operate anyway.
You ever have anyone do the little thing where you're driving home at night late and they bump your car?
Have I been to car accidents like that?
No. Have you been bumped?
No, it has not happened to me, but I always tell my daughter and my wife and my son, and when we teach personal safety classes, we tell people that. Don't pull over.
Yeah.
Because it could be a ruse, a setup to get you to pull over, especially if you're a single female or a young girl or even a young kid. They might want to try to, whether it be sexually assault, rob you, or even worse, kill you.
I had it happen to me.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And I got bumped. And then I thought,
must have been a real sexy guy looking for another real sexy guy, Dave.
I don't think that was the case. Although that's happened as well. But in this case, I got bumped and then I just drove. I didn't respond. I just drove. And I got bumped again, same car.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then
I wouldn't have pulled over either.
Yeah.
No way.
And I was in Lynn.
Oh, really? Lynn? That's even makes it even 100% worse.
Yeah. It was on a route that I was not going to stop on.
Nothing ever came of it?
No, I just kept going. And
was this like 10 years ago when you were in your fighting prime, or is it like last week where you probably couldn't defend yourself against a 12-year-old?
I think it might have been. that would have been 10 years ago too.
Okay. Yeah, that scenario right there, like I said, that's a basic training technique in any personal safety class that police departments will give to their students.
Again, it could put yourself in harm's way. You don't get out of your car.
You can always just call 911 and tell them where you're driving. I'm driving on such and such a road. There's a car behind me. It's 2 a.m. and they just hit me for no reason. I'm not going to pull over. Could you please send a law enforcement officer? And hopefully that town hasn't defunded their entire police department, Dave. And you're in rural USA, where in some of those parts of the country, you have a response time of a half hour because they're traveling 30 miles to get to you.
They got to go long. They got to go
absolutely.
Long way.
Sticks of Maine or New Hampshire or down south in the Carolinas.
Here's another case, and I think I might have made a mistake with this. Same deal. I'm driving along, and there was a guy body in the street. Thought, I'm not going to fall for this. I just drove right over it.
There you go, Dave. Body in the street.
Just kidding.
I'm not going to fall for that old body in the street con.
Just kidding. What else we got?
Well, we got prevention. I should have kind of characterized it as to decrease your chance of being a victim.
Okay.
Because to prevent any type of crime is a very difficult thing. First thing, Dave, the first 3, stay home, walk, and drive a shitbox. If you stay home, Dave, and you never go out of your house, the only time you're going to be victimized is if you get conned over the computer.
Yes.
Some Russian lady asked you to send $1,000 for her sick father. I hate those girls from Russia. I hate them.
Plural.
Walk, Dave.
Yep.
No one's going to steal anything from you if you're walking, except maybe your purse or your wallet.
Well, unless you get rolled.
You can get rolled. You can get beat up. A shitbox. I want to tell you, driving a shitbox has its benefits, Dave.
Yeah.
Because no one's really looking to steal.
Hide in plain sight. My
2006 Toyota Sienna with 130,000 is not top on the list for the car thieves in Newark, New Jersey. I can assure you of that, Dave.
Yeah, I know. It's one of the joys of the CRV is that it doesn't attract a lot of attention from police.
There you go.
Or from criminals, rather. Or either criminals when I'm out and police when I'm speeding.
Avoid high crime areas. However, it's also a random crime, meaning it doesn't always just happen in high crime areas. They also go to nice neighborhoods where people have money, Dave, and they have nice cars.
Yeah.
So if that's where I'm going to steal a car, I'm going to the nice neighborhoods where I think all the wealthy people are hanging out.
Right. Yeah. Somebody told me that one of the highest crime rates around here in terms of property crime is in north of Boston is Marblehead.
Absolutely, because people have money, they have jewelry, they have all sorts of Oriental rugs.
You're fishing with
paintings. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're going to go to your house. What are they going to get, Dave?
I know.
You got no money. You got no jewelry.
It's already been taken.
You got a bed, you got a table, you got a microwave.
Everything's been stolen by previous girlfriends.
To prevent your car from being stolen at night in your driveway, obviously lock the door and windows. However, a very skilled car thief is going to get in.
Okay.
All right. A very skilled one will get in. You won't even hear him or her. However, to prevent someone from carjacking you, doesn't matter if your door's open or not open, your window's open or not open. If they're carjacking you and they got a gun, they're pointing it to your window. If they're carjacking you and they got a tire iron or a baseball bat, they're smashing your window and dragging you out of there. Yes, if it's open, it's probably a lot easier for them. But if they want your Mercedes, Dave, and you're stopped at a stop sign and they have a bat on them, or if they have a gun, more likely than not, you're giving that up.
Yeah.
Whether or not they smash the window or not.
Right. Whether you intend to give it up or not, you're going to get...
Absolutely you are.
You're giving it up.
Stay alert. Always be alert. Saying in law enforcement, you stay alert, you stay alive, baby. And that's very true. That's not only in law enforcement, hypervigilance, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of your community. Who are the people in your neighborhood? Who's behind you? Who's to your left? Who's to your right? Stay alert. You stay alive. Trust your instincts. If your instincts tell you this is a bad situation, I'm not telling you to blow a red light, but if it's 2 a.m, and you pull up to a red light in a bad neighborhood and you see 3 maniacs sitting on the corner, I'm blowing that red light.
Right.
I did that. I was driving through Memphis, Tennessee. It wasn't even 10. It was like 8 p.m, but we were driving in the minivan from Massachusetts and we were not in a nice neighborhood. And I had the gun right on my lap and the kids were down in the back seat. And I told my wife, do not, unless you absolutely have to, stop at any red lights. Just go slowly through if you can do it safely.
Right. So roll.
Roll it right through.
You don't want to run the light, but you don't want to.
And I'm thinking,
but you don't want to stay there either.
And I'm thinking a seasoned cop, if they saw that and then they pulled us over for that, they would look at us and say, yeah, I would have rolled through also. Well, I would have stayed on the interstate too. I wouldn't have got off on the interstate either.
I think I told you this. This was a long time ago, but my buddy Felix and I were driving through somewhere in, I don't know, Boston. And a cop goes, you don't really have to, pulls up and goes, you guys don't have to stop at these lights. I mean, we were, you don't have to stay at the lights, is what I was saying. And it was good advice.
And the only thing about instinct, and we'll go back to the young kid who was killed when he jumped on his car. His instinct was that of a fighter, someone who's going to protect his property. Sometimes that instinct is going to work against you.
Yeah.
You have to understand the type of person you are even before something like that happens. And if your instinct is to be an aggressor, you might want to think twice because your aggression could get you hurt, could get you killed. But on the flip side, being passive could get you hurt, could get you killed. So it's hard to give an answer there, Dave. There's really no right answer.
I'm thinking that the personality of the carjacker is such.
He or she is not going to be compassionate toward you. Well, it's usually guys.
What percentage of criminals do you think?
Carjackers are females? Not many, but probably, you got to throw them out there. Okay, they're not 100% innocent.
They. Anyway, and of course, the big exception is when it's property, it's one thing.
Well, when it's your family, we're going to end on that. When it's your family and they're trying to steal your car with your daughter or son in it or your wife, then you're going to have to use whatever means you have possible to save them. However, in your case, Dave, maybe that young daughter of yours getting carjacked and kidnapped might not be a bad thing for you.
That'd be terrible. That'd be terrible. I would think, though, that probably they get about 3 blocks and then they get tired of her and say, all right.
They'd give the car back to her and say, we're sorry. Tell your dad we're sorry.
Yeah, we didn't realize. I'm not going to let her listen to this.
She's fine. She can handle it.
She can. That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah, so I would say stay out of Detroit, Baltimore, St. Louis, obviously Chicago. Those are some of your top places in the country right now where carjacking is at such a high rate that no one's safe, Dave. Not even you and your Honda CRV.
Well, that's happy. That's on that happy note.
Another happy ending note from the podcast.
Don't we have another story where somebody just gets killed, just blows away the criminal? Anyway, this has been Inside the Line, Real Stories by Real Cops. I'm Dave Rattigan. That's Dale Lawrence. Thank you for joining us. Share us. Let us know what you think at realstoriesbyrealcops@gmail.com. And we'll see you next week.